So, I gave all of our speakers this invitation to, essentially, I reached out and said, can you write down a few words on how you'd like to be introduced? And the problem with doing that when somebody is not only a colleague, but also a friend, is they take a lot of liberties of how they want to be introduced. So Mark Malpass challenged me to actually read what he sent me, and I was like, I'm going to do it, Mark. So I have the honor of now introducing Dr. Mark Malpass. I once kidnapped his stuffed chicken from his office when we were co-workers many years ago, and then I left ransom notes around the building for him. For this, I'm truly not sorry. He does, however, have a large wealth of other experiences from around the world at making science real, and has a lot of collaborations going on with a number of institutions globally. So unfortunately, I had to invite him to speak to us today again. More seriously, Dr. Malpass is now the Director of Nutrition and Innovation at Masterfeeds, and he's going to give us a commercial perspective on getting nutrition for us. I did it, Mark.
So when the placeholder came out, there's anyone who knows me who knows what the next slide is going to be. Because I am not going to resist the opportunity to put some hockey on the thing. Now, you might be looking at this, thinking to yourself, Team GB against Team Canada in the World Championships. That's going to be the shortest video in YouTube history, right? But it's not. No, the reason I put this on is to talk about language. If I said to you, today, I got in my car, I went to fill up the fuel, I put petrol in it, I drove to the chemist, went to buy some vitamins, that then I went to put in the boot, and then I drove here, right? You all sort of understand what I'm saying. But if I say, this morning I went to the gas station, I filled up the fuel. I went to the pharmacy, I bought some vitamins, which I put in the trunk, and then I drove here. None of you have to translate it in, yeah? You all sort of know it. Now, moving to Canada, I had to actually start to use these different pronunciations. But there's a really important part of this because language matters. And when we're talking in science, we all too often forget with our industry partners that they might not be afraid up to date with the latest terms. We can get lost in jargon and acronyms and whatever. So my appeal is to think about the language you're using and use it very carefully. I mean, there is one, which is aluminium, right? Which is the right way of saying it, right? And that's actually that's a really good thing because when we want to stress the words that we want to use, we can use that for dramatic effect to really push home the subject. Now, when I was looking at this, of course, I found this photo, which I find amazing, because we've got Conor Bedard looking like what on earth has just happened to me. And we've got Ivan Moti, who was one of my coaches a few years ago, looking like he just won the lottery. And you would not know that the result was the other way around. You know, I mean, for Team GB, that is a result, let's be clear. But appearances can be deceiving, can't they? Now, we've already talked about teams, and teams have to be a mixture of people. And we've obviously in a hockey team, we've got netminders, we've got forwards or whatever, and we bring a variety of skills. And on that photo, and there's some bearded guy over on the left-hand side there, that's the National Ice Hockey Rink in Nottingham in the UK last summer. And there's a variety of people. There's actually the captain of Team GB here. And why was he in that? He was there as one of the coaches. And there's actually my 3-year-old daughter at the time, Mackenzie here. There can't be too many 3-year-olds that have been playing hockey on 2 different continents, I'm guessing. So, you know, that's why was she there? She was there, this is day 3, 2 hours at a time on these training camps. Yeah, she got on the ice the last 15 minutes of day 3 to bring the energy into the room, to try and re-motivate everybody and push them to the end. Yeah, we had guys skating over so they could pass the puck with her as she's shuffling around on a little balanced skates. Yeah? Everyone has a purpose in the team. You don't want a team, in my experience, teams, you don't want them to be too big, to be really successful, really impactful. Everyone's got to have a role. And sometimes the most important thing is to bring the energy to the room. Now, I'm not in all of this talking about language and whatever. I'm not talking about dumbing anything down. Don't, you know, the people that you'll be collaborating with in industry are not necessarily stupid people. They just don't have the familiarity with the terms that we use. So it's just about making the things accessible. I love this thing, the you know, complex but right versus simple but wrong. Yeah, isn't that a metaphor for life? Now, in addition to this, we sometimes have to ask ourselves why. And that's Dr. Malpass, and that's the clever Dr. Malpass in our family, okay? And as we've already worked out, this is true. Okay. Now, when Dr. Malpass and I were dating, we had a number of very quiet moments in our conversations. And one of the really uncomfortable silences in one of our dates was when I asked her, why are you doing your research? Now, my PhD could be written on the back of an envelope by comparison to Sarah's. Sarah did really proper science. She looked at conitase enzymes, she looked at seedling generation, she overexpressed that gene in different yeasts, she did X-ray crystallography of it, she did all sorts of really whiz-bang stuff, yeah? And then I asked her why, and she didn't know. She had no idea why she was doing it. Eventually, she said to me, well, knowledge capture. But neither her nor a supervisor had ever thought why they were doing that. All too often. And don't get me wrong, that initial research is important. That initial knowledge capture is important. We do need to push boundaries, but we should at least have an idea of why we're doing these things from time to time. As I said, we ask different questions like that, sort of why are we doing this research? But we can ask all the tough questions, and as teams, we shouldn't be afraid to ask those things. So one of the ones that I've asked many times over the years is, if it works, will it work? It sounds a stupid question to ask, but it never stops me doing it. And by that, I mean, if the science part works, will it work in practice? Like in the feed industry, will it actually make will it actually go into the food? Will it make a cube, make a pellet? You know, those are some things that are really important. I was involved in one piece of research with the University of Nottingham, and before my involvement in the project, they had this amazing thing that they found some like really astonishing impacts on microorganisms. But could we get it to stick in a pellet? No, not a chance. If that had been thought about at the very beginning of the project, we would have had a very different outcome to that. I've been very fortunate in my career to be mentored by all sorts of people, and one in particular is the head, what you already retired, the head of cargo in the UK, is the most senior cargo employee in the UK. And I was once sat on a boat having a beer with him actually, and I said to him, man, well, if you learn one thing at the start of your career, what that you know involved, what would it be? And he said it's about the trust equation. So I was amazed that Adam talked about trust as well. It's really hard to find that. And with the trust equation, for anyone who hasn't come across it, is this: it's about, you know, how credible you are, how reliable you are, how close you are to people, but all over self-interest. The thing about teams is, why are people wanting to be involved in a team? The minute that somebody thinks that someone's in a team just for their own self fulfillment, that erodes that team spirit. That trust equation is so key to success. And excuse me. This is not just about teams. This is I've used this throughout my career. Yeah, know who you're talking to, and in terms of that, like, how do they like to be communicated? So at my first job in the UK, the feed company in the UK I worked for, one of the things I worked out very quickly was how the boss of the company liked to be communicated to. And I did that from a book that my father gave us. It was actually built, it was written, I checked it the other day, it was written in 1989, yeah, before some of these communication things were even thought about, which takes it. But the principle behind it still plays. Some people prefer face-to-face, some prefer emails. I hate emails, for example. They get lost in my inbox. If you ever want to really communicate me and get my attention, don't email. Bad thing to do. Pick up the phone, speak to me, that sort of thing. That works. Texts are really good for someone like me. And there's a variety of different things. And to think about who you're communicating with and how, what makes them tick, or how they respond is really key to this. So it's not just the language we use, it's how we do it as well. This thing about bullet points versus a paragraph of things versus prose. Different people have different different views on that. Some people don't like bullet points, they prefer them. Other people are quick and they just want to say your points to summarize for them. So that's really important. So, and then the other thing is as scientists, we quite have to know quite a lot about our little subject. And we're really enthusiastic about it. We want to talk all the time about it. But how much do people really need to know of what you know? Do they want to drink beer, or would they rather have a shot of whiskey? That's the question, isn't it? And so as the working with the teams, that getting the right balance in that is really important. And so on that note, I'll use one of my favourite quotations, which is never miss a good chance to shut up. And thank you. And does anyone have any questions, please?
Yeah, Mike.
I think one of the evolutions in GRIP KTT extension is that the team has changed and gotten bigger, but it's not really clear who all's on the team. So especially in today's environment, trust seems short in supply. Looking forward, how would you, just use this room as an example, how do you get people together to trust each other? How do you build that trust, which was number one step in having this pyramid?
Yeah, that comes with time. It's got to be genuine. It cannot be fake trust. You can't manufacture it. It's got to be developed organically, in my experience. So you, as a manager, I try and create environments where that trust can build and foster. How can we put people together? Not so we force them together, but they want to be together and want to work together. And I think that there's no magic wand to wave on that. It's all about let's develop naturally. Far more impactful when it's natural. Charlotte?
I love the, do they like beer or whiskey? And until I take you drinking, I would never know, Mark. My question to you is, when you say you need to know how much they need to know, how can I assess that before I present or meet with the group?
When it's the first time, tough, really tough. But as a team gets to know, you can so start off light and then turn the volume slowly. Would be my suggestion. Because if people want to know more, they quite often ask questions, particularly if you've got the right environment and then people feel they can ask questions.
I have a question, unless somebody else did.
I have a question. So when you're in the team for a while and you realize that the team may not have the right members, how best do you go about modifying that without hurting people's feelings?
I'd love to know. I'm thinking how to reply to this without actually saying what's going through my head. Does anyone know who Sir Alex Ferguson is? The ex-Manchester United football manager, and he was asked by somebody about how did he have a team that functioned really well not just a championship winning team, but a dynasty. Yeah. And Sir Alex Ferguson said, get rid of the and we'll delete that expletive. That's part of it. You know, but it's not easy to do. It sure as anything isn't easy to do. You can try and minimize the impact of your terrorists in the team, that's for sure. And sometimes I've been in a team where you have to take that difficult decision and get rid of it as a terrorist, and then they're sort of setting the whole new dynamic. But it ain't easy. It really isn't easy. Brilliant question.
Sorry, so I'm a journalist with Ontario, and quite often when I'm dealing with researchers or industry experts, much like you said about the language, how challenging is it for a researcher to understand when they're presenting what the language level needs to be because my solution is quite often, can you explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old with an extensive vocabulary? You know, so I can write the big words, but you need to make it so I can share that with my general public.
Yeah.
But when, you know, like, as a researcher, I don't know what the transition may be, or what maybe solutions are there to help them remember, you know, not everybody is on that level of
Yeah,
understanding.
I think it depends on the publication, doesn't it? And if we're writing for a local newspaper, it might be very different to especially it's an industry magazine. It's about trying to use the terms that are that are used within that community. And so for researchers, yeah, try and learn them, try and use events like this and to talk to people who are in industry and try and use that as like a test bed to try and find out some of those terms. Don't be afraid to ask us as well. Not everybody comes from a farming background, you know, and not everyone knows the difference between a gimmer and a wether in terms of sheep. Farming itself has all sorts of acronyms and weird uses of language. So it's about trying to do the best to try and get the scientific world and the agricultural world to sort of combine. So,
I don't know if this is so much of a question for you, but maybe something for us all to think about, because I find that I appreciate the metaphor of the team, but I'm not sure if we know what the game is that we're playing, and we're being told we're all on the same team together, and it is about like advancing agriculture, but I'm not always sure that we have the same shared vision. I think we're all playing like a bunch of different games.
Yeah.
And it is harder for us to know, how you put the right team together. Like often our knowledge mobilization teams are actually quite small groups and we have like a specific thing we're trying to move forward, but together, like if we're a team together, what's the goal? What game are we playing?
yeah, that's a great thought. I think, you know, a lot of researchers want publications and a lot of industry wants to keep knowledge proprietary. That's a real difficult game because that's not the same purpose. And yet we both want to find out knowledge. There can be conflicts in that, but the self-interest part is more, I mean, that can be just on the table and discussed open. If you have that sort of level of transparency, that actually helps with trust, doesn't it? Nobody thinks I'm doing something as an ulterior motive. It's not straightforward. And it's a really good point to raise to the roof. With one more?
I think an add-on comment to that, I mean, my first thought is, isn't the whole purpose about competitiveness for the country and productivity, and maybe it's a bit financial and gain, so I think it's a really important question, and sometimes we, we're driven so much by where the funding opportunities are, right, whether it's revenue generation or public funding to motivate us, and so I think it's a really good question. I think we have to like tie it back to the people side again. So maybe just take this opportunity to say thank you for hosting this. It's been fascinating already. We've only been here for a couple of hours, not even, sorry, 1 hour, 2 hours. But I appreciate that question, Melissa, because we are asked to think about being on a team. Really, what is the motivator? And we're told it's competitiveness, but like, what does that mean? How do you get everybody meeting in the same direction? So. Let's hold this. Let's be environment, it's the people. So like, yeah, let's just, if we can get more agreement on like where we're all headed, that feels valuable.
I think people have to share a purpose on a team, like the end goal needs to be shared, but the rationale and motivation for doing it doesn't have to always be perfect. Like, not everybody needs to be around sustainability. Some people could be on efficiency, which actually is the same outcome, for example. Like, but as long as that's talked about, that helps with the trust. So, okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
So, I gave all of our speakers this invitation